Take a look at Republic of Carthage here. This again one Rick Kelly sent me out of his print and play selection over on Spotlight on Games. Hopefully he'll probably have to remind me by putting a link up and then I'll add it to my video. I always forget to put anything there, just in case, you know, there's tons of comments and his gets hidden or something. Okay, so like the intro said, this is very, very derivative of Republic of Rome. Now, I love Republic of Rome. It's got some flaws, and this game carries some of those flaws over in terms of simulation. So, for example, Republic of Rome has an aging issue. In my view, it's supposed to cover hundreds of years, and one character can last the entire span of the time. So I've made some fudges for that, and I think those same fudges would go with this. I did not do them because I'm learning a new game with some different layers on it. And I think as a game it works fine without those fudges. It's just, it kind of hits, you know, at me in the, oh geez, that doesn't make sense type of thing. Okay. I think this one's a little more complicated in terms of the amount of stuff you have to track. Although the rules are clearer, they're also maybe not 100% nailed down, but then again, neither is my Republic of Rome copy. I think the newer version may have nailed things down a little better. But hopefully the things that I had trouble with that weren't just me being an idiot, I'll go into, you know, because it's an online print and play right now still, go into the rule book as it moves forward. So what does this provide? You know, basically there's two things this game can give you. One is an alternative to Republic of Rome along the same lines. And the other is an expansion to Republic of Rome, or kind of a prequel to you're setting up a game of Republic of Rome. Unfortunately, I didn't get through to where I was going to be playing both games, but I got damn close, and close enough to feel like what was set up here for the both games, and you can see my wrap on the prior video, the last playthrough part. I think it's part 4, 3 or 4, probably 3. Where I brought some, what I think are serious questions as to what the hell you do in terms of maintaining some level of realism and still maintaining kind of the play, the spirit of the game that was intended. Because basically what happens is you play the two games. This one starts earlier. You play this one through one deck. Then you play this and Republic of Rome's first deck simultaneously. And I guess you could just keep going with Republic of Rome if Carthage is destroyed. But again, that would be, you know, a very serious undertaking. And then you kind of balance the victory conditions as to how well people do on the two different tables in terms of placement or whatever. But that kind of falls apart if somebody wins one of the games. Now, it is not usually the case in a game of Republic of Rome that somebody wins on the first deck especially. In fact, if you want to prevent that from being likely, and I think it is a little more likely, or a lot more likely in this game, that someone's going to win a military coup and take over Carthage. One thing that I noticed is the, I don't think I mentioned this before, but the chances of getting troops to follow you in this is 5 or 6 in the early Republic and 4 through 6 in the late Republic. In Republic of Rome, I think it starts out 6, 5 or 6, 4 through 6. So if you're really worried about trying to prevent that, by making those die rolls a little bit more difficult, so make it 6 and 5 or 6 in the two periods, you're going to make it a more stable republic and less likely to collapse into some sort of military dictatorship. And the military dictatorship is problematic because the game is designed to be won by somebody when they succeed in forming that. Or there's the other problem, which is that it may be easier to get yourself elected Safet for life in this game than it is to get yourself elected consul for life. And it certainly looks like it would be easier to get the 35 influence victory in this game than it is in Republic of Rome. That is because of the trade cards here. And we'll talk about them in a little bit because they are one of the biggest changes in the design. There are a lot of little differences. So this game is gonna give you something with the same basic framework as Republic of Rome, but with a very different world to operate in. You're not so much concerned with the military conquests and victories here. You're more concerned with money. Money is easier to get, and because of that, it's easier to become important by buying your influence up. Something that no one can really stop you from doing, except by killing you. But that's never a sure thing in these games. In fact, maybe assassinations should be made a little bit more effective. That would also prevent people from making those victory conditions quite as easily. But in terms of the rebellion aspect, you're able to, you have a more likely, a Middle Republic, for Republic of Rome, chance of getting troops over to your side. But in the Middle Republic, the average Roman leader is facing kind of weak wars. And there are a lot of Roman armies. There are 25 Roman armies in Republic of Rome. The chance that someone's going to have a significant percentage of the entirety of the Roman army available to them when they're rolling on the same dice table that they are here is pretty damn low. Matching wars can cause it to happen, and you could have a Scipio or someone like that. Well, he's first deck, but you could have someone who's facing a major combination of wars take a big proportion of what Rome can field. And if Rome has economic difficulties at the same time, it's possible. But I very, very seldomly see someone successfully march on Rome in Republic of Rome. And I've never seen a 35 influence victory. The money's just not there for you to buy your influence that heavily. And I've very seldomly seen people get up to that 21 influence. And that's pretty easy here because of all the cash. And then also, you could get very lucky with the trade cards and end up being able to win the game easier. So, in a sense, you could actually say this is kind of a more interesting game. I'm not sure if that's the case, but I think so. I think it feels more like maybe some of the later decks in Republic of Rome do. Most people kind of, I think, prefer those because they are more interesting and a little shorter. Shorter than the Grand Campaign or whatever. But with this, starting with the first deck, you actually have this really kind of tight situation. And that can be very, very neat. But if you want to play the two together, I think it becomes a little problematic. And I think you might want to tweak a number of rules. You might also want to consider putting the Republic of Carthage game aside once somebody wins it, and then continue playing Republic of Rome if the two are being played alongside. And vice versa if somebody wins the Rome game, and just assume that whatever is standing in there, whatever dictatorship or whatever was established, you're not going to worry about that anymore. You're just going to play it out against that. Given that I wanted to showcase this, the fact that somebody won this, if that was the solution that I took, that I just made them the sort of non-player country that they were going to be, I saw no point in breaking out Republic of Rome and starting to play it and saying, well, somebody won the Carthage map already. Can somebody win the Rome map in the first deck? That tough first deck. Okay. Let's take a look at my sequence of play, which is, again, a really great thing because I think ROR doesn't go into enough detail in the sequence of playing. This is very useful. But again, the rules are much clearer. You can get an understanding of what the game's about in a much easier way. And that's really, to me, just infinitely a positive. This may, although it's a more complex game, I think, may be an easier game to learn the first time. Again, I don't know what the new version of Republic of Rome looks like, though. So perhaps that is better than the original version. Take the Greenwood influence out or something. I don't know. So what do we have that's terribly interesting here? So first of all, you have more positions in this game, and they're all basic game positions. There's nothing like in Republic of Rome. You have the Pontifex Maximus, the religious leader. You kind of feel like there should be a religious leader here. There's certainly room for one. There's certainly a religious element to Carthaginian life. The names kind of reflect that. All the Baals and such not, and the sacrifices and everything, all very interesting stuff that would have been kind of neat to explore. But some of the stuff that we actually know more about, like the senatorial processes, that's all kind of cut out. And I think that probably for the good, because the game is, as I said, more complicated in a lot of ways anyhow. You have these 5 offices. That's your council. They almost feel not explored enough. I feel like they should be... I don't know. I feel like they should have sort of a more dominating feature than the Suffet does, in a sense. The Suffet feels too much like the Council of Rome, and these consular positions are just really ways to make money. And some of them, the Agora or whatever, have some additional kind of neat influence, like being able to control the trade a little bit better. You're the guy who gets the first draw, which makes it a very powerful position. The Censor has his prosecutorial abilities, which are very much the same as Republic of Rome. There may be some slight differences. I don't think so, actually. I think I looked that up and decided, no, that's the same. Okay. But then the next section, the trade phase, after you collect your income and such not, the trade phase is new. And this is because Carthage is a country more concerned with establishing trade routes and trying and really being a commercial enterprise, in a sense. It didn't really expand its empire terribly well. What I found in my playing, and I think it was simply more a fact of the luck of the cards than anything else, although maybe some of my not being comfortable with the situation in the game may have applied to it as well. But what I found was I didn't get to go on any trade expeditions, which is something we'll see a little later. So I can't really talk about any of those. They seem like a cool idea. What they do is they're going to open up more of the trade cards. But I did get to see enough of the trade card aspect to really realize that I was kind of out of my depth early on in the game. It's not, the trade cards, the core rules are the civilization trade cards core rules, where you're able to exchange and you get the multiplier. There's a lot of money available in these trade cards, though. I mean, a lot. Once you get a certain number of traders, and that seems to kind of snowball, especially if you're playing the game right, which I wasn't for quite a while, in terms of the faction leader not dying and losing his traders. He gets to keep his traders, so he becomes kind of like the guy who you want all your traders on for that reason. But as that number gets up, you just start pulling a whole bunch of trade cards, and you immediately start pairing up over a couple of turns, in addition to whatever you can trade for. And anything once you start to get over... Once you get to the 3 card and up, just like in Civilization, you can generate huge amounts of cash with that. Now, those huge amounts of cash have a tremendous influence. So for one thing, you can buy your influence up. And you can hit that 21 level pretty easily. You can hit the 35 level probably pretty easily, and that's an auto win right there. There's nothing anybody can do to stop you except murder you as you're as you're upgrading. So that's something to keep in mind if you're playing it as a standalone. That may be fine. It probably shortens the game and makes it more intense. But if you're playing it as a part of a dual game, you may actually want to tweak around with those rules and maybe double the cost of influence gains or something like that. Just because it's so easy to get 70, 80 bucks down right away at once. That huge influx of money probably doesn't too much affect the ability to grab other people's senators unless somebody's doing the trading all wrong and just isn't investing enough in trading, and therefore they get left behind. And I had players kind of falling behind because they didn't have the trade investment levels that they should have. You roll a couple of dice and you can pay. And you may want to pay no matter what amount you roll, because you're going to roll at least a 2 on the 2 dice, and you have to get a 12 to get a new trader. Well, 10 more bucks is probably worth another trader because each trader gives you another trade card, and one level higher. And I feel like I kind of underpaid on those suckers, just because they're not terribly worth it. They didn't seem as absolutely key to the game. I didn't really think about how quickly that progression goes up and how much money you're making once you have it. And once you have that little engine in place, if other people don't have that same engine, they're screwed. Of course, I've been screwed in Republic of Rome too. But I don't feel like there's a single thing other than maybe luck which screws a faction in Republic of Rome. But in this, I think there's a strategic choice that you can make that's pretty easy if you think in Republic of Rome terms. I'll spend a couple of bucks, but I don't want to spend more than 4 on a trader. Well, nah, you want to spend a lot on them. You want to basically you want to spend whatever you need to. I think maybe I don't have anybody spend more than like 7 though, so. I just would look and say, well, that's not worth it. I think it is. It might not be at some point. There might come a point where you have enough traders or there are few enough trade cards, because that's another thing. The events and the wars and stuff affect the number of cards that are out there. Not all of them are even there at the beginning of the game. Until you get some exploration expeditions succeeding, you're not even playing with a full deck of these things. So that's kind of cool too, because it puts some limit on the money that you have available. Maybe not enough. Again, it felt to me like I was able to generate a lot of money as long as the whole trade decks weren't, out of play, basically. Oh, what else? The core forum phase is very much like Republic of Rome. You take your turns, you get to roll dice to see if you get a random event or a card, which is kind of a luck factor there. But the card is also a luck factor. It may or may not be useful to you. The best thing you can usually draw is a person, because you can go take them right away and add them to your portfolio of senators. And that gives you additional power, and also people who aren't scary who can get offices. Because there are a lot of offices here, and they all come with an influence game. And of course, influence is one of the ways you can just win the game. It's kind of interesting to see the people recycled more quickly in this game than in Republic of Rome. I like that. One of the problems in Republic of Rome sometimes is there just aren't enough people for all the jobs that have to be triggered. Now, as soon as the number of people goes below a certain level, more start spawning out. If there are dead people, they rise up. No. The family just recurs with a new member, and then you have new people who can take the offices, who can take governorships, etc. So there's a little bit more flexibility. You're not stuck with, geez, we got to give consul to this guy, and he's already at 14 influence, so he's just about ready to be dangerous. What about the senatorial business? Again, very similar. Some differences in that eventually you can send just anybody off to go fight a war. It doesn't have to be part of the government, which I think is... we don't know enough about early Carthaginian history to know if the Suffetes had to fight early on, but certainly by the time they start showing up in the Roman annals, you got generals out there who are not in charge of the government. I like the fact that when you don't win a war, there's a chance that the leader is just executed. That's very Carthaginian. There were regular cases where they would crucify someone for not doing well enough. Rome didn't have much like that. The closest they had was an honorable suicide that some people chose to take. But for the most part, if you lost a battle in Rome, unless you were killed in battle, you might not be, you weren't going to be the top of the popularity list, but it was accepted that battles were lost. Hey, we can build another legion. Okay. So that segues nicely into the troops. The amount of troops that Carthage has is very low to begin with. Now, eventually it gets huge, at least against certain wars. That helps the person with a small army early on to march on Carthage. And again, might be a more intense and dramatic and conclusive game that way. It might be a better game that way. But it also kind of feels like you get maybe a little cheated if you were planning on playing the whole campaign, especially since, like I pointed out, I'm not quite sure what to do if I combine the two games and somebody wins Carthage before Rome starts. What I decided to do was stop, for obvious reasons that I explained. There are different values for how much it costs to build different troops. I don't know how much that actually really adds to the game. It seems like a kind of minor factor. I wonder, here it says Siculus for Sicilian and Roman wars. Maybe you can buy them and only use them in the Sicilian wars, in which case I could have used them. But then, I don't know, I guess I couldn't use them for anything else. I guess I could maintain them or disband them if I wished, depending on the desires of the government. It makes the calculations a teeny bit harder. It's not that big a deal. But they don't add much in terms of flavor or anything. I guess it's kind of cool to have the ones that are organized by different areas. So, like Libyans, Numidians, the elephants. These you can only get if you own certain areas. And then the Siculus and the Gallic, I guess, are only available for certain wars. Now, can you, take them back for a revolt or whatnot? I don't know. That's not very well explained in the game. I was left thinking that these extra troops would be created by cards, and some of them are, and some of them not so much. I didn't really look at this too carefully. I just looked at, well, I know I only have Carthaginians, slingers, Celtiberians, and companions, and the fleets, obviously. And therefore, what? So the different costs, minor, I don't know how much that adds. It kind of feels funny that I have all these different looking units, and they don't really have different effects. Maybe that was intended, and then it was decided, this game is burdened enough with stuff. We don't want to make it too complicated, just counting them up is good enough. And it really is. It's just, it kind of feels funny to me. That's just me. So, we left something out, which is the ability to set a tax rate. Republic of Rome has the bread and circuses, well, the bread part, where the government actually funds the poor people. Let me make sure this is still running. I'm always worried now that I've had a couple cutouts because of the battery. I've got it hooked up on the cable, and I'm never sure now. Am I just babbling to nothing? The problem... What am I talking about? Yeah, so you're able to set a different tax rate instead of the land bills, which exist in Republic of Rome. The land bills keep the population happy. You don't worry about the population in this game. That's something that's been taken out. Again, you know, there are a lot of new complex things. Why put all the old complex stuff in? There's no chance of a popular revolt in Carthage. And that's cool, you know. I don't see any reason why the games have to be exact analogs of each other, then with more stuff added on. And I think it's clever to kind of strip things away. We don't know whether or not, you know, how much Carthage was susceptible to that kind of revolt. So why not make the game a little simpler? But the tax rate is kind of uses a similar voting kind of mechanism. You propose something, you propose an increase in taxes, and you get more popular because taxes on the wealthy, on the trading class. And then what it does is it takes a percentage of your trade money. And this is very intriguing because if trade money is stupid and the people don't want it, they can cut it to almost nothing. They could set the tax rate at 90% or something like that. Of course, nobody's going to, you know, really develop their traders if it goes up that high. So I have the feeling it's going to settle at some interesting value. I feel like I kept mine at, I kept mine at 10%, and I feel like that was too low probably for the game. Probably the first thing that you do in the first turn should be raise your tax rate to 10%. You get some popularity out of doing it. The government's a little better off, and it doesn't really hurt the players at the low end of the trading value because the taxes are always rounded up on their trades anyway. And once you start making bigger amounts of money, it takes a bigger bite out of it. How much higher it's going to go? I don't know. But I don't think it's going to go much above, say, 50%. Just because that might actually, well, it could if the player's desire is actually to inhibit the value of trade, right? Rather than to get more income for the government. You probably maximize your income for the government somewhere between, say, 30 and 50% in terms of people still being willing to invest heavily because they can make a lot of money off of it, but not really, you know, they'd be producing more revenue for the government then because it's a higher tax rate than at 10% or 0%, but they're still willing to invest heavily into it. And, you know, that's up to the personalities and the people, and as well as their goals. It could well be that people are willing to spend some money on the tax, even at higher tax rates, for the simple fact that they want to flood money into the government as well as get that little additional edge on other players. They're still going to make good money even if they don't make half of that money, even if they only make, say, a third of it or whatever. At some point or another, though, the tax rate is probably going to inhibit people, like at 100%, from ever investing in traders again. Simple capitalism there, right? Oh, like I said, I didn't get to look at the exploration. That's kind of cool because I think it gives you a slight influence gain when you succeed. But the big thing is it adds more trade cards. So it makes the overall trading richer. And the ability to handle that. Although some of the events and effects, like Salamis, slice the trade all to nothing. And I think Salamis was an auto effect. I don't think players got to control that. I'm a little iffy on the players controlling the events. For the same reason that I don't like it in CDGs. Although, to be honest, you're not sure who you are in this game. You're some sort of... what is your faction? Is it an ideal? Not really. They don't have any real goals except personal aggrandizement or something like that. Yeah, let's mispronounce everything. So, you know, maybe you're the god that favors these families, and you could see it to that extent. Personally, though, I feel like I am that little grouping that's seeking its own power, and it maybe has some additional ideas and ideals behind it, but largely they're just seeking their own power. I already talked about the public reaction table, and yeah, that's so cool. And that's really about it. Overall, I think it does a really good job of providing you with this other representation, you know, another society in about the same kind of level, that you can play a very Republic of Rome style game. It's very much like it. Gives you a nice shake-up if you're tired. You know, if you've played Republic of Rome as much as I have, it may get a little stale. I don't know. I get a real kick out of it still. So, but this gives you something that you can shake it up significantly. That whole trading and the money available from that, man, that makes you start thinking differently about what's going on in it, even though you've got the same core factors. The same way, say, different XX games give you a different flavor of game. This one seems to have its own pattern that's different, and I haven't, you know, in one play, or half a play in the sense that it ended early, I certainly don't have my feel for that. It might be possible to prevent someone from marching on Rome or getting that high influence. I don't think so, though. I think this is liable to be a much, much more aggressive and winnable game than certainly the first deck of Republic of Rome. And honestly, the later decks are hard to win too, just because of the nature of the events facing Rome. On the other side, I think that more work needs to be done on linking the two games. You might get a lucky linkage. Or you might come up with a rule like I did, which is, you know, that I would have the very simple rule of, look, somebody won Republic of Carthage, we're not playing that anymore. Now we're going to just go to the Republic of Rome game that we had planned on playing anyway, and we'll play the first deck of that. And if Carthage falls, that doesn't mean anything. That guy won Carthage. Nobody's going to be making any decisions that affect Carthage's ability. The problem there, though, is, of course, I think it's pretty likely for somebody to win Carthage. And then you're no longer playing these interlocked games. So I would kind of say, well, why bother then? You know, just play one or the other. They're both good and fun, and they both have different ways of looking at it. It's just trying to mesh them like that doesn't work. So then when I try to look at a more realistic meshing, it's just not hitting me. If it had, I would have gone on. For example, you know, if I had some sort of imperial continuation rules or something like that, which honestly, you know, is the kind of thing I wanted to do to Republic of Rome too. I have something that covers the Roman era in a Republic of Rome basis. And Rick pointed me to it. I don't know if I have a copy of it kicking around somewhere, but it's basically Republic of Rome translated to the Imperial era, which I'd love to look at too. Someone else designed it. Because I really do like this core game system, and I think it's really neat to see it applied to different things. Founding Fathers, which I should plug given this is a Heli game, is available actually for sort of a published purchase, so you don't have to deal with kind of do-it-yourself type cards and stuff. And that that has a very different flavor and feel to it. That's not just translate Republic of Rome over to early America. It has a completely different kind of pacing and feel to it. And it's a very good game, by the way, and you should take a look at my vids for that as well, and consider whether or not, you know, you either print and play it, which is still an option, I believe, or order one of the different possible. You know, you can just get the card set, I think, for it. The green version comes without a box. It may come with the board, which would be cool. But yeah. You know, these kind of political but decision making, where you're actually, where the things you're doing actually affect how your country relates to the world around it, and actually reacts to events. I really like these kind of games. And I think the Republic of Rome model is one of the best for it. And, you know, I've seen other models, the Canadian Civil War, which you can look at my vids for that, which doesn't really feel like you're reacting to external events, or even really terribly internal events. You've just got this kind of bopping of pieces as they change colors, etc. It doesn't feel as connected. I've got a lot of election games that just surround a singular election. Road to the White House, 1960, Divided Republic, all kind of things like that. Those are interesting to me, don't get me wrong. All of these politically based games are interesting to me. But I kind of like that these deal with real events. Junta is another one that's interesting to me. But again, it feels so much more limited than these. These are real events, historical, researched, and taking, you know, having an effect on your political situation and on the political decisions that you make in a way that a single campaign cycle, even if it's historical like 1960 or Divided Republic, or that kind of abstracted kind of feel of Canadian Civil War or Junta, just doesn't really cover. Those are just internal, the latter two. These, you have to deal with threats to your nation. You have this political framework that allows you to deal with it, that allows you to make, you know, your decisions as a group of players, and at the same time, you're trying to win this game as well as do well for your nation. And I think the Republic of Rome model and this one do that more in a more appealing fashion by being this kind of semi-co-op where everybody can lose than Founding Fathers does, although Founding Fathers is very interesting. The fact that somebody wins every game of it is a little weird, but you don't really have much choice there if you're going to have the game end with the Civil War. Is the Civil War the loss for the Republic? It can be. It can be. There's an optional rule to make it uglier to provoke the Civil War, essentially. But anyway, I like this one. I like it a lot.